Hello, everybody. This is Kapil Gupta, and welcome to the launch of the Soul app, the Soul Wellness Program. This is a mental health initiative. I will let my co-founder Pranav introduce the platform, and then, of course, we have a star cast of Sanjay Jha, Nidhi Rajdan, and Sam Pitroda, and none of them needs any kind of an introduction. I mean, these are some of the key personalities in the country. So let me have Pranav spend a minute to talk about the platform, and then, of course, the panelists to introduce it.
So good evening, everyone. I'm Pranav, and let me talk about Soul app, what it means, and what's the background we thought about. So Soul, an Arabic word, means peace. So Soul Wellness is a mental health platform with a difference. Soul is meant to be a platform for people where they are traversing the path from sadness to clinical depression. It is an early detection community-based support mechanism. Its main mission is to create a marketplace that can connect people needing help with other peers in different parts of the country, that can provide help, basically a safe space for people to be heard, not judged. People do not want to share their mental health issues with people they know, fearing they will be judged or there will be vulnerabilities will be misused later. Our sincere belief is that support is best had through unrelated peers, and that is what our marketplace will ensure. Mental health related issues have been around for as long as humanity has been around. One thing that humans just can't do is shut up their minds. This is what distinguishes the alive from the dead. As humanity moves towards prosperity, mental health issues start to surface more. This is because people have more time to think, and it is because people became accustomed to a certain lifestyle and start doing everything to protect. So this is the mission statement. This is the problem statement we have at the Soul app, and Kapil is going to talk more about Soul. Over to you, Kapil.
I will now request Sanjay, Nidhi, and Sam to say a few words about Soul, and then we can begin with the introductory video, and that's the launch.
Just want to say, yeah, sorry, Sanjay, you go ahead.
No, I thought Sam should, kind of make a short statement, and then we can. Yeah.
Well, good to hear about the platform. I'd never heard of it before. So thanks for the brief. Great objective. Wish you all the best.
Thank you so much.
Kapil and Pranav, I wish you outstanding success. I know that in the data on COVID pandemic in India, the number of people who have officially died are around 4 lakh and just a little more. Although it is speculated that number could be as high as 4 million by some research analysts. But the truth is on mental health, it could be an astronomical size of India's population that could be battling anxiety, stress, loneliness, apprehension, clinical depression, and various other, traumatic disorders, the kind of horrendous experiences people have gone through. And I therefore feel that this initiative is much required. And I hope it will become like a chicken soup for the soul. With due respect to the vegetarians, I mean that from the point of view of actually strengthening our ability to handle the vicissitudes of life, the volatilities of circumstances that are beyond our control. So wish you all the very best, and thank you for inviting me here.
Thank you so much, Sanjay.
Congratulations to you, Kapil and Pranav, for this initiative. I think it's a great idea. Especially at this time, as we are still dealing with the pandemic, people of all ages, whether it's teenagers or the elderly, they've all been grappling with a lot of mental health issues. And like you said, often people in this country are very reluctant to seek help for it. And it's great to see that there is an initiative like this that will encourage people to open up about what they're going through. And I hope that it, encourages more and more people to come out and speak, and I think when you see leading sports stars and actors and others talking more about mental health issues, it gives people the encouragement to also seek help. And there's nothing wrong with that. So that's, I think, a great initiative that you guys have put up, and good luck to you.
Thank you so much for that, Nidhi. With that, so Soul app right now is a social media platform and a website. The Soul app, the mobile application, is in progress and it will be launched very soon, and which is where the concept of marketplace will be introduced. But already the social media platforms that we have created have a conversation that is going on around stress, anxiety, and depression. Mind you, I am not looking at, so Soul app's objective is not really to treat people who are suffering from clinical depression. We think that's that would require experts, which we don't have. That would require support from the medical professionals, which they will get. What we are talking about is this whole array of people, from the first time they get sad to the time that they would end up in clinical depression. We think if the right kind of support is provided, we can actually do a lot more in terms of ensuring lesser people get into clinical depression and more people are able to get out of their sadness in a more rapid manner. With that, I would request the support team to play the introduction video for Soul app, and then we can get started with your session. Thank you so much, everyone. With that, I would request the moderator to introduce Nidhi first, and then, of course, Nidhi as the moderator of this session to actually take things forward from there.
Thank you so much.
Should I just dive?
Hello everyone. Welcome to Pragati E-Vichar at the Delhi Book Fair. I would like to introduce Nidhi, although she is not an unknown personality, but still. So Nidhi was born in Budgam, Kashmir, and is an Indian journalist and a TV personality. She was the executive editor of NDTV and the primary anchor of NDTV 24/7 news debate show Left, Right and Centre, and the weekly debate show The Big Fight. Since 1999, Razdan has covered a variety of news events and hosted a series of shows, often reporting live from the news scenes. She has reported extensively on a wide range of key political, economic and social stories from the Indian subcontinent, covering the Indian politics and foreign affairs closely, including the India-US nuclear deal, general elections, several state elections, all major news developments and elections in Jammu and Kashmir, the earthquakes in Gujarat in 2001 and Kashmir in 2005. Over to you, Nidhi.
All right. Thanks very much for that introduction, and welcome, to everyone to this panel here this evening. Welcome to Sam Pitroda, head of the Indian Overseas Congress. He's an entrepreneur, of course, and someone very well known to all of us. Sanjay Jha. How do I describe you, Sanjay? Author. I don't know how to correctly describe you in the Congress context. Former spokesperson, certainly of the party, but rebel Congress leader, truthful Congress leader. I don't know, we can talk about that a little later. And we'll hope to be joined by Subhrashtra, who's a well-known writer and founder of an initiative called The Churn. And it's a very interesting topic that they've given us to talk about today. Is the nation polarized, or is it political programming? What does India want? Let me begin with you, Sam Pitroda. Is there any doubt that India is polarized at the moment, for whatever reason it may be?
First of all, good to be with you, Nidhi. and Sanjay. It is indeed a privilege for me to have this opportunity. Somehow I thought, being part of a Delhi book fair, we're going to talk about the recent book that I wrote on Redesign the World. But just a few days ago, I found out there's a different kind of a conversation. So I am a little bit confused. And then I heard about this new platform on top of that. With all that, let me answer your question. First, I firmly believe that we are polarized. I firmly believe that it is part of a political programming. And what does India want is a complex question. We have to ask that of India. We all have our opinion. I would focus more on what India needs as opposed to what India wants. I think what we really need today for us to move forward, develop our economy, provide employment, improve our governance, is a totally new way of looking at where we are. We basically need to bring democracy back, where institutions are allowed to operate independently. Civil society is given seat at the table along with business and government. And we need scientific mindset. I see serious issues with all three. I think we need to go back to our concept of democracy, decentralization in decision-making, freedom, freedom of the press, freedom at universities, freedom to speak up. And these are some of the fundamental issues that we need to address, as opposed to really worrying about religion, worrying about history, worrying about traditions. We got to look forward. And we cannot look forward if we don't build the right institutions, if we don't allow civil society to participate, lead, and if we don't develop scientific mindset. So I am very concerned as to where we are. I also want to go back to fundamentals on truth, trust, love, inclusion, diversity. And I think when I look at situation today, it is exactly opposite.
Okay, let me just those are good opening comments, Mr. Pitroda, and I'll come back to you because there are a lot of layers in what you said, which we must explore. But let me get opening comments from Sanjay Jha on that. Sanjay, just to sort of be the devil's advocate here, are these fault lines that we're seeing in society today? Whether firstly, I personally believe there is polarization politically, on religious lines, on class lines, caste lines, and we have multiple fault lines. Did these not always exist and in a way have become exacerbated in the last few years? So would it be fair to put the blame only on one government or one type of ideology for this?
Nidhi, a very valid question, but as a student of India's political history, we all know that the founding of India happened in the background of the extremely horrendous partition where millions were massacred in cold blood. So the aftermath of that, we are still, I believe, a young country. And 7 decades on, to expect or to romanticize that Indian society would become completely harmonious or there would be communal serenity would be, I would say, probably, being over optimistic. I'm not that sanguine about it. I would like to be a realist here. Yes, you're absolutely right. At some point, there has been a dormant level of, I would say, angst, at times becoming animosity, which we all know has resulted in communal conflagrations. So I cannot, run away from that reality as somebody who's been in active politics for a while. that India has had definitely a simmering discontent, if I can use that term, which occasionally, kind of sprouted into pretty ugly, heinous crime, from different sides. The truth, however, is that the scale of this madness, the outrageous hate that we see today, is completely different since 2014. And the reason behind that is pretty obvious, that there is a party in power that is unambiguous in terms of its political objective, which is to create a Hindu Rashtra, which is what these ideological mentors, the RSS, wants it to do. So to give credit to the current dispensation, they have no qualms in pursuing what they believe is their narrow political agenda. And therefore, to answer your question in short, because I think it'll be a great conversation if I can give a short answer and you can get Sam and me more often, we are today polarized with a capital P. And the tragedy of India, Nidhi, is that we are talking about this in the 75th year of Indian independence. But you go back to it, but the othering project in India, to answer your question, has always been there.
Interesting answer there. Sam Pitroda, you described it as political programming, the polarization that you see in India today. As a political observer and a journalist, I see it more as maybe some intrinsic bigotry, to be honest, amongst a lot of fellow Indians, which is very sad that you see come to the fore. And do you think that may explain why people are willing to forgive a lot of failures on other fronts, whether it's on the economy or COVID, etc., and willing to continue to give the BJP a chance?
Possible.
And since you're heading the Overseas Congress, why is that particularly so? I mean, I don't mean to generalize, but there is a big constituency of Indians who live abroad who buy into this kind of polarization. Why is that?
Well, first of all, I don't want to comment about party and BJP did this and Congress did that. That's not something I want to participate in. But I would say a lot of people abroad hang on to religion. They build temples. They believe that their culture is being lost while they are abroad. So they believe that the only way to participate and preserve your tradition is to be in the forefront of religious movement. A lot of people here are temple walas. They donate money, they build lots of temples. So fine, that's their privilege. Okay. But to me, what is more important is humanity. I've just written a book called Redesign the World, and where I talk about the fact that there are only two fundamental issues today: planet and people. Our planet is in pain because of global warming, environmental blunders, need for fresh air, clean water. People are in pain because everywhere there is huge inequality. They are not included in the main process. To me, those are the issues. Issues are not related to whether I'm Hindu or Christian or Muslim or Sikh.
But that's not how the narrative plays out in India.
People have to decide that. No, that's up to people to decide. I can't. I'm just telling you my view, because I don't think temples are going to create jobs. Temples don't create jobs. What we need today is jobs, health, economy, clean water, clean air. If you are willing to ignore all that in the name of religion, more power to you. I can't help.
Sanjay, do you think that political attempts at polarization, do they always work? Now, they may have worked in certain elections in certain states, but if you look at Bengal, for example, where every attempt was made to polarize the election, it didn't work. It blew up in a big way against the BJP, actually. And it was a resounding verdict in favor of Mamata Banerjee. So why is it that it works sometimes and it doesn't at others?
Nidhi, I think at a regional level, yes, there can be a disparity because some states have a lot of the minority population. And there is no denying the reality that the minorities in India today are scared. I mean, they have repeatedly told that you're second-rate citizens. You know, when I hear Sam, for example, right now, I do hope this video is watched by millions of people, because what Sam says are the seminal issues that India should be talking about, right? But we are not. I mean, you know, you have been one of the most brilliant presenters on television, and you watch it even today, and you can see that there is an extent of rabid bigotry out there, which is discussed not just on television, but is overwhelming social media. I believe Nidhi is going to work, and I'll tell you why I'm a worried man today. Think about it, that when 9/11 happened, we're going to now talk about his 20th anniversary. George Bush famously said, either you're with us or against us, right? And that is I can understand America's anger because the World Trade Center bombing was horrific. America had a right to seek its own retribution. But in a great number of ways, it painted literally every Muslim to be an extremist or a terrorist. And I think, in a great number of ways, that has shaped that narrative that today dominates, I think, not just our country, but elsewhere. Think about it, the Supreme Court in India has had to comment on the communal, kind of broadcasting that happened after the Muslims in the Tablighi Jamaat were called responsible for the Corona jihad in India, right? So you are talking about a country where 80%, I'm a Hindu, I belong to the privileged 80% of India's population. But the political narrative now paints that the 14% of the minority Muslims are a threat to the 80%. Now, frankly, India should be not talking about minority appeasement. And I have always said my party, and I like Sam, I'm going to bite the bullet on saying my party, the Congress party that suspended me, should be able to say that, listen, a minority appeasement, if you're successful at 100%, gets you 14% of the votes. But if you do majority appeasement successfully, which happens because of an outstanding propaganda program, the BJP is assured power at all times. So I do believe that India is battling this issue. And I'm sure at some point you'll ask this question. The events in Afghanistan with Taliban taking over are going to have, in my opinion, serious ramifications in domestic politics going forward.
Well, we're already seeing that, but let me just sort of follow up to that, Sanjay Jha. In terms of the opposition's response, and primarily let me come to your party, which is the Congress.
Right.
How do you think the opposition led by, and I primarily mean the Congress, because let's face it, it's the only pan-India opposition party. And I think if the opposition has any hope in hell in 2024, it would only be with the Congress in the driver's seat.
Yeah.
So when you look at how they handle these issues of polarization, I get very confused signals, because, you do see Rahul Gandhi and then even Priyanka Gandhi Vadra going to temples now or taking a Ganga dip or whatever. And that seems to have become an afterthought. It's like a sort of a B team of the BJP that's playing out here. Kejriwal successfully kind of did it in Delhi and has positioned himself very clearly to the right. But it sends confusing signals on what the Congress stands for exactly. Is it getting trapped into following the same game, is my question.
Can I answer that?
Yeah.
Sure, both of you, please go ahead. Sam Pitroda, you can answer that first.
Okay. First of all, let's not give too much emphasis to symbols. What is important is the fundamental values. Just because you went to temple or you went to mosque and cameras showed you that day, doesn't mean much. It is a matter of what you believe in.
But political symbolism is important.
Do you believe in inclusive society? Yes or no? Okay, fine. You went 3 times more to temple and 5 times more to mosque. Don't give too much into reading it. I think our media tends to create controversy, which is fine. Fundamental issue today is we live in a world which is very different. We are all connected, billion people today. Never in the history of India we were connected. In fact, at a global level, all 8 billion people are essentially connected. What does this hyperconnectivity mean going forward to humanity?
It means fake news spreads faster.
Yeah, that's okay. But the point is, are we going to educate people with that so people can look forward? Or are we going to use that for misinformation, all kinds of false sound bites, and further divide people for our personal gain? Winning election is not this purpose in life. Winning election is part of a process, but you really need to first define what you stand for.
Is
Do you
that
stand for democracy?
what the Congress is going through right now? Not
It's very clear what Congress stands for is very clear. It has nothing to do with Rahul going to temple or Priyanka Gandhi going to temple. Congress stands for democracy, freedom. Congress stands for all the things Congress did in the past. There is a 70 years of record. Just because somebody said Congress didn't do anything doesn't mean a thing, because they're ignorant. They are liars. You know what Congress did in 70 years? Could keep democracy alive in the country. That is the biggest accomplishment. Look what is happening in the neighboring countries.
Well,
Can
with the
any
exception
other
of,
neighboring country
with the
of the
exception
size
of
of
2
India?
years, with the exception of 2 years in the mid 70s, would you say that was
Okay, fine. Those are, I accept that. Yeah, that's okay. That's gone. That's over. But look at the larger picture. Okay, if you want to look at glass half empty, fine. You are right, maybe. But that's not the concern. Concern is we have been able to hold a diverse country together without guns. We have allowed people to speak up. Take, for example, my own case. My father had fourth grade education. When India got independence, he felt empowered. He felt like a citizen who can make a difference in life. He sent all his children to college. I got my master's in physics for less than $10 total. Who can do that today? And then you turn around and say, we didn't do nothing for 70 years. You're naive. You're ignorant. But you propagate this kind of myth. You lie. So today I find that the truth is converted to lies. Trust is converted to mistrust. Love is converted to hate. That is my concern. That's what we should be debating.
I'm asking
Not
more
who went to
about
temple 3
political,
times
I'm asking
or
more
5
about
times.
political strategy. And Sanjay, come back to that question. Then you see, political symbolism is often important. I mean, I don't recall before the last few years seeing pictures of Rahul Gandhi, visiting temples, but now it's become, much more prominent. And
So fine, he's entitled to go to temple as a citizen.
sure,
he's entitled
but it
to go to
wasn't.
temple.
But political messaging is important, and Sanjay would know that. I mean,
The messaging is same.
which is what?
Democracy, human
The same.
rights, freedom. That's the political message.
But do we play into the hands of those seeking to polarize and which the Congress says is what the BJP is doing? Sanjay,
it has
let me ask
nothing to
Sanjay
do
that.
with that. Just because you go to temple 3 times doesn't mean we are falling in somebody's hand. I think you're
Okay.
completely misreading.
All right, Sanjay, what do you think?
Yeah, I think, I agree with, Sam has really given a very philosophical treatise, which is frankly the opposite answer. But since you asked me about the political complexion to that question, the truth, Nidhi, is that the Congress has to bite the bullet on this debate of Hindutva versus Hinduism. I think it's an absolutely inept strategy, because the BJP is going to play that time after time after time. And the Congress needs to tell this to the people of India. I have been recommending this to the leadership, that address the issue. It's the elephant in the room. Now, you can't dodge and duck it. Now, I totally agree with Sam that we are inherently a secular party. But the BJP says you're pseudo-secular. The BJP says you have done minority appeasement. Answer that question. And I do believe there's an answer. The Congress in 2021, even today when I go on shows, is apologizing for Shah Banu, is apologizing for banning Salman Rushdie's book. And I agree that they were wrong and they were regressive decisions. But the inability to bring the narrative to current times. How long does it take for a Congress leader to tell the people of India that Hinduism is centuries old? And I'm a very proud Hindu. But why do we allow the BJP to hijack Hinduism? Hindutva is a political mobilization program. And we should distinguish the two factors. You got to take the issue head on. That's my first answer. My second, And this, I'm going to be a little controversial here. And even you may not agree with me, Nidhi. I do believe that a lot of us who are secular liberal, we are equally hypocritical at times. I'll give you an example of West Bengal. In West Bengal, where I think Mamata has proved that you can tame the communal, kind of tiger. The other aspect is that if there is violence, which is perpetrated by the minority community, where maybe somebody from the majority community is a victim, is there enough condemnation happening of that? I sometimes wonder. And this is what the BJP, kind of exploits politically. So, in my opinion, the Congress should go out there and with a lot of pride say, we are a secular party. And what is a secular party is about everyone having their space. So I would say, hey, I'm pro-Hindu, I'm pro-Muslim, I'm pro-Sikh, I'm pro-Christian, I'm pro-Jew, I'm pro-Jains. And that's how it should be. Why are we so ill at ease in saying what is the obvious? It's in the Constitution, for heaven's sake.
Be clear what you stand for is what you're saying. Very interesting. I'm going to come back to that point. Happy to have Subhrashtra joining us now. Nice to see you again, Subhrashtra, after such a long time. Both Sam Pitroda and Sanjay Jha here agree about one thing, that the nation today is polarized. Would you disagree with that? Or would you say, yes, we are polarized, but is it because of political programming or just inherently how society has been for a while? Subhrashtra, you'll have to unmute your mic.
Hi, Nidhi, and apologies for joining in late. I was stuck in traffic. Nidhi, I think polity always has been polarized, will always be polarized, especially in a democracy, because when you go out to vote, you choose a leader, which inevitably means you discard the leader in case of a presidential form of democracy, more so in parliamentary democracy, because then you are literally choosing between a couple of ideals, one set of ideals versus the other. The problem is when polarization begins to take a communal color or begins to take a casteist color or a racist color in case of some of the Western democracies. The problem is not with elite polarization. It becomes a problem when masses start getting polarized around an issue without much information or without credible facts, and we've seen it in many protests that have gone on in the past, etc. So to answer your question, I think democracy, the meaning of democracy and the way in which democracy manifests itself will always be about polarization. Whether it is positive or negative, that depends on the kind of leaders that we have at the helm and leaders who also sit on the opposition and try to look at issues. I'm really thankful. I could just gather a little bit from what Sanjay ji was saying. He's very right. What's wrong in coming out if today politics is about identity? And I think Fukuyama's book and his entire journey from identity not meaning anything to identity being the only marker in today's day and age, I think we've come to realize that identity is something that you can't ignore. There is no harm in coming out and saying that, yes, I am a Hindu. And then there are these certain, fringe elements within the Hindu fold today that I don't agree with. And I think that kind of polarization is absolutely okay. Why should it be a problem? And why should it be a problem in a Muslim, for example, coming out and saying that, well, what is happening in Afghanistan is absolutely gross. Why do you have to start taking political positions to suit specific vote banks and specific constituencies just because it's a matter of numbers? Because if you only talk about numbers, which Nidhi, unfortunately, we will come down to numbers in electoral democracies, there will be polarization and counter-polarization. So yes, we are politically programmed to be polarized.
As a young person, Subhrashtra, as a political observer, and you've also been active on social media, on television, etc. You write a lot. Do you think India is far more polarized on religious lines today than it has ever been? I mean, I was saying before you came on that I believe fault lines have always existed and they've just sort of come to the fore and, been exacerbated maybe in the last few years, but they're there. Is it more than before? And I ask you, for example, I've been in television and you see the kind of narrative that plays out on TV. I, for instance, don't understand why Indian Muslims should have to answer anything about what's happening in Afghanistan. Why should they be talking? Why are they being linked to the Taliban? Indian Muslims have nothing to do with that. So why are Indian Muslims always being put through this patriotism test is something I've never seen, before. So how do you see the situation today?
A counter question to you, Nidhi. What Swami Yati, whoever, says on camera, or what a Shankaracharya from Puri says on camera, why should I be answerable to what those quote unquote doyens of Hinduism are saying?
Agree.
As I said, it's about polarization and counter polarization. To answer your question, have we become more polarized today? Perhaps yes, because social media has given access to a lot of information. In fact, let me quote an anecdote to you, and I'm very proud of quoting these anecdotes because Hindi में कहते हैं ना आगे नाथ न पीछे पगहा. I don't have to mince words in order to say things. I went to your organization's office the other day, and I was in a studio, and I asked a simple question on CAA, that when the Magsaysay awardee is standing in front of Shaheen Bagh, and a Muslim woman comes and says कि मुझे तो देश से धक्के मारकर निकाल दिया जाएगा, लेकिन मेरे पुरखे यहाँ पे बसते हैं, मेरे पास कागजात हैं. Why didn't the Magsaysay awardee journalist come up and say कि आपको कोई नहीं निकाल सकता? ये factual बात नहीं है. आप फैक्ट्स आप ये है फैक्ट, और आप इस बेसिस पे आप कीजिए. आपको बिल के क्लॉजेस से समस्या हो सकती है, उस पे एक अलग बहस हो सकती है. The point is, when intellectuals of the day begin to ignore these events as maybe adding on to certain political parties, vote bank, etc., then the polity of the day will be counter polarized in more than one base. And not that on social media there are nuanced people sitting there to look at every side of the argument. They're not.
There's no nuance on social media, but I think the concerns that stemmed from the CAA were not because of the CAA alone, but because the government had earlier talked about bringing an NRC after that, which is what made a lot of people in the minority community afraid. But that's a different point. Sam Pitroda, I'm coming back to this question of how the Congress is the principal opposition party then deals with these issues. Now, there seems to be a sense that Muslims, for example, which put their faith in the Congress once upon a time in a state, for example, like Uttar Pradesh, no longer see the party really standing up for them and saying that, we are here to, protect, stand up for you and your issues. It seems like Sanjay, I think, was saying earlier that the party is confused, about, certain issues. I can tell you, for instance, even on Article 370, which stemmed from Jawaharlal Nehru, the party seemed very confused about where it stood. It's a Congress legacy, which the Congress seemed to disown. So why is it? And therefore, you see now Muslims voting in large enough numbers for parties like Mr. Owaisi's party in Bihar, where he got enough seats to, ruin the party for the UPA combined. They don't see the Congress upholding their interests anymore. Is that good for the Congress?
First of all, let me clarify. Congress is not confused. It is your interpretation. Congress stands for democracy, stands for inclusion, secularism, freedom, all of these things that really created the fundamental idea of India, clearly articulated in our constitution. That's what Congress stands for. If somebody wants to say, oh, you didn't help me, so you are not, promoting Muslims, that's not the point. The point is, do you stand for your constitution? You may make mistake here and there. In 70 years, 75 years journey, you are bound to make some mistakes, which is okay. But don't get hung up on it. See a clear path forward and not look at backward. We don't have eyes in the back. We have eyes in front. Can we look forward and see what kind of a nation we want to build? Do we want democracy? Do we want inclusion? Do we want to celebrate our diversity? It's your option as a citizen. Do you want to believe in truth, trust? Do you want to really focus on employment, economic opportunities? Or you want to get hung up on who went to temple? What did somebody said about Afghanistan war? Okay. To me, those are events. Look at the process and don't get hung up on one event here, another event there. These things happen in life. People do make mistakes. It is okay. But have you changed the core narrative of Congress? No.
What do you think is the
Somebody may
biggest
have-
mistake the Congress has made? Because you're saying that, mistakes can be made. And honestly, if I was to
Mistakes
ask
are
you,
made. Of course, I make mistakes too. It's perfectly all right. Okay, you can take me for a pass.
currently,
That's also
why,
okay.
why is the Congress not able to snatch the, or gain control of the narrative? What's wrong? What's wrong right now?
Today, media is captured. All institutions are captured. Forget about media. Okay.
There's still quite
All
a bit of
institutions are
independence here
captured.
too.
Okay. I don't get, for example, the kind of coverage I need to get. I don't blame anybody. I blame myself. Because I cannot spend money. See, if I say something, 500 guys on social media will start tweeting against because they are all paid. I know that. I don't need to answer to them. You know, my friends and my relatives, oh, look at these guys. I say, look, ignore them. They are all paid guys. They have nothing to do with reality. Okay. But general impression is, oh my God, Sam Pitroda did something wrong, said something wrong. I don't care.
No, but sorry.
I believe in fundamentals. So let me go back to this. Foundation and the fundamentals related to Congress party has not changed.
Look, the fact is, if you look at individual states, Mamata Banerjee being the most recent example, Stalin in Tamil Nadu. Now, these are all opponents of the BJP. These are regional stalwarts. They don't have the media. I mean, the same argument would then apply to them, that the media is.
Of course, they have media. What do you mean they don't have the
But
media? They are heading that state.
They were able to connect with voters and were able to fight back against the BJP. So what is the Congress lacking? How does it change the narrative to what you want?
Congress is not lacking anything.
I don't think the economy, about a scientific temper.
It is. I don't think, you see, it is not about a debating contest. Life is not about a debating society. Okay. I'm not debating to win. I'm just telling you the facts as I see it. I may lose debate, which is okay. I don't care.
The Congress doesn't want to win elections.
No, it has nothing to do with winning election. Don't confuse it. Okay, winning election has to do with how people vote. Winning election has nothing to do with winning debate. Okay, don't get confused.
Okay, Sanjay, I get it. Sanjay Jha, your thoughts?
Yeah, Nidhi, one of the rare times when I will respectfully disagree with Sam, whom I have great respect for. To win the election, you will have to win the debate. There is actually no option. The truth of the matter is this, that if you look at the state of the country today, or the state of the nation, COVID mismanagement was absolutely catastrophic. Record unemployment, an economy that is yet to actually register the kind of impact it should, a sectarian strife, collapsed institutions, a foreign policy disasters, by the dozen, the China's domination of the entire neighborhood. You look at practically every aspect of governance, and you've seen the current government actually scores at best a D+ or a D-. Normally, an opposition party at this point of time should have been in a pole position for 2024 elections. It's not happening. And I do believe that to a great extent is because the opposition, led principally by the Congress, and you were right, the Congress is the linchpin or the fulcrum of an opposition pushback. And if the main grand old party is going to be enervated, that makes the job of the BJP very easy. Now, all of us here, Shubrashta, who's, I think, a wonderfully articulate spokesperson for the thought she has, all of us here are an elite of India. In a great number of ways, we are English-speaking liberal or, whatever, borderline elites. And I think the problem that bothers me as a citizen of this country is the fact that we have mainstreamed violence in India. That is my biggest objection to what I call is a polarized society, Nidhi. When I hear about a bangle seller, being harassed because he cannot sell, that's his livelihood, for God's sake. And you're denying him that right. I believe that bothers me when I go to sleep in the night. When I saw that video of a man who was being thrashed and beaten up, and his young daughter is pleading for help. I mean, these are manifestations of a society which is degenerated. Can I be honest on your show? If I was the leader of this country, I would have commented on them. I would have gone to my chief minister and said, what's going on there? And I think in India, we just don't get angry enough because, hey, that is a poor Dalit or an activist or, somebody who's, just a headline for half an hour. You saw the picture, Subhrashta, you may have seen that, Sam, I don't know whether you did. There is this man who's being dragged on the roads for some apparent crime he committed. And he's being dragged on the roads, he died. And I'm like, how is India, how are we as citizens of this country at peace with ourselves? To me, these are exhibitions of a society which is degenerating, which is a society that is frankly disintegrated. Because if today we say that in America can rise in arms for George Floyd, and we are so cool and casual about people dying, it tells me that India has got a civilizational crisis today.
I agree with Sanjay completely.
Okay.
Sanjay has articulated it well. What is going on today is not acceptable. Some people may speak up, some people may keep quiet and understand. And people will have to judge during election time whether this is the right way to move forward, or we need to really go back to fundamentals.
Let me ask
If we're not
Subhrashta.
willing to go back to fundamentals,
Yeah.
we will see rise of these kinds of things.
Okay. Subhrashta, would you say that, yes, are you concerned with the fact that there seems to be some normalization of this kind of hatred today, which is on display, which is worrying?
Yes, of course, Nidhi. I don't think any person with any kind of emotions or sympathies or empathy would go on to say that it doesn't concern them at all. I mean, we saw COVID and how COVID really impacted each one of us in more than one ways. I don't think any middle class family in India has been spared the wrath of this disease. And we saw how grossly mismanaged our entire healthcare system is. So I agree that, there are a lot of these concerns that need to be voiced. The question is, and the question in front of us as electorates really is, are we allowed to, or shall we allow ourselves to polarize politics in a way where caste, creed, religion, etc. does not matter? This is not a question to politicians. And I'll tell you why, Nidhi. I actually take a very strong objection, Sam, to what you said, that it doesn't matter what 500 people on Twitter are saying. You might feel some of them are, paid, but
I'm
who is
saying at a
not
personal
paid?
level. No, I meant
Yes.
at a personal level.
Right,
Okay.
right.
Because
But
I can't spend my
unfortunately-
time on it.
Yeah. I'll give an example from a region that perhaps Sanjay Jhaji would know. He comes from Mithilanchal. Floods have been ravaging that place ever since. I mean, right from Phanishwarnath Renu till now, we only hear and read about floods in Bihar. How many Congress MPs have been there from Mithilanchal, from independence till now? I think till recently, Mithila's politics was dominated by the Congress. Why did the Congress politicians not take it up as an issue rather than, devolving themselves into discussing caste, creed, communalism, etc., etc.? I won't name the politician here, but the person went on to say, "Ki, Madam, vote jisse milega, main usi pe baat karunga." Problem is not only with the politics of the day, Nidhi. Problem is also with us, the electorates and the voters. Till the time we don't take it upon ourselves to not discuss inane issues of the day, things are not going to change.
Which probably explains why you see these issues creep up in election campaigns time and again. We're completely out of time on this session. I think one of the loaded questions in this debate was, what does India want? And I think, let's face it, India is not a monolith. It's very clear when you even look at even national elections. Frankly, at the end of the day, there is a certain percentage of people that have voted for the BJP. That's not necessarily the majority. Different states vote differently. But that is the system that we have. So, I think that is a bit of a loaded question. What does India want? What will India vote for in 2024? I still think Mr. Modi is very much ahead in that race. Mr. Pitroda, maybe your party, you can advise them to wake up and decide what their agenda
I would
is.
say India wants peace. India wants
Everybody does. Everybody
employment.
wants apple pie.
India wants growth. India wants prosperity. If that's what India wants, India will have to decide the
All
future.
right. Well, thank you very much to all of you for joining us.
Thank you,
Great to have this sort of political conversation after a very long time. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Nidhi, you are a delightful anchor as usual. Thanks, Subhrashta. You came
Thank you.
late, but I'm glad you made it. And Sam, Always an honor to be with you on the show.
Bye. Bye, guys.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Thank you.